Well, there's Warren. Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
Oh, is it just you and I?
And I don't know. I've been waiting since 6:30 to connect, and I assume there are going to be more people.
Here we go.
Sorry about this. We had technical issues. I don't know who's the yeah, I don't know who the host is. I'll have to find out.
I'm pretty sure it's me.
What?
I'm pretty sure it's me. After being on
Okay,
the
we got it.
thing for 7 minutes, I went and looked at one of Ari's emails. So it looked like
Right. Well,
I'm
Karen
happy
got
to
it.
log off and let you take
Nope.
care of it. Okay.
Nope, you're good. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Karen.
We got it, Harry. Yeah. Kathy, we're on. I'm gonna be here for a bit, and then I gotta run. I'm going to the slope tomorrow, so I've got packing and things to do. Sorry, Kathy's running way late.
Thanks for everybody's patience.
Yep.
Yeah,
Very much
thank
so.
you. Sorry about this waste of people's time here. How did you get on, Karen?
I searched back through the emails to find the one Allie sent that had the email and login. So I actually had somebody had to log in as them to do it.
Hey, Kathy.
Hey, sorry, you guys. Sorry about the confusion here about logging on. Somehow I couldn't get logged on, so sorry about that. Okay. There were technical difficulties in the Gleason household, apparently. So welcome everybody who has joined in. Thanks, Dan, for getting us going. I see
No,
you've already
Karen did.
Oh, thank you, Karen. So I see the meeting has already been started to record, and since we're running late, I'm
Yes.
going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:40 p.m. So welcome everybody. Happy New Year. The first item on our agenda is to approve the agenda, and I do have one thing to add. So I'll just entertain a motion for the agenda and then we'll go from there.
I move to approve the agenda.
Thanks, John. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Lauren.
This is Lauren.
Yeah, second. Welcome. Okay, I inadvertently forgot to add under executive report that there should be FCC delegate report on there, and I apologize. That'll be by me, and I don't know how that got left out, but it did. So does anybody else have any comments or additions or amendments to the proposed agenda? If not, is there any objection to the agenda as amended? If not, then that is approved. So thank you guys for that. Okay. Okay. So we have our secretary, Chris Habich, has provided the draft minutes from our December 2nd, 2024 meeting that was sent out with our meeting notice yesterday. So I need a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved, John Isaacs.
Thanks, John. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, I think I heard Dan, so we'll go with him. Is there any comments or amendments to Chris's draft agenda? Excuse me, draft minutes from December? We always kind of put a caveat if we find any typos or minor inconsistencies, then we can get that done, but otherwise they'll be considered a formally approved. Any comments? Okay, is there any objection to approving the December 5th, 2024 TCC meeting minutes? I don't see any objections, or that's approved.
Nope.
Okay, great. Okay, let's see here. Next item on our agenda is announcements. I've got a few of them, then we'll open it up to see if anybody else has any comments or want to share anything. So let's see. The filing for the municipal April 1, 2025 elections starts tomorrow, Friday, January 10th, and runs through Friday, January 2024, January 24th, 2025. And in our area, the West Anchorage Assembly seat D is open. Cameron is running for re-election. I don't have any idea if there will be anybody else filing to also run in that for that seat. And then also Anchorage School Board, there's 2 seats that are up for election. It's seats A and B. And I don't know the status of current board members, if they are going to run again or if they've timed out or what their status is. But definitely want everybody to be aware that you have till January 24th if you want to run for either that one assembly seat or either of the 2 school board seats that are open. And Elvie Gray Jackson provided information. Senator Elvie Gray Jackson. There's free legal services for low-income Alaskans provided on Martin Luther King Day on January 20th. So that is going to be held at the Mountain View Boys and Girls Club from noon to 4 p.m. So if you know anybody that might have benefit from that opportunity, then be sure and share that information. And then thirdly, let's see, their YMCA is doing the second of a series called Housing Conversations on January 24th. And there is an Everbright where people can RSVP, but I can't provide that to you. So you might want to Google it, but it'll start with local historian David Reimer on the history of housing discrimination in Anchorage. It was spurred by Charles Woolforth's op-ed in the ADN during the debate over the home initiative, where he claimed no action was needed because Anchorage had a minimal history of racism. So if anybody's interested in that, that is again on January 24th. And unfortunately, I wasn't provided any kind of time. So I'm sure if you Google this, Housing Conversations, YMCA, you can get more detail. So those are the announcements that I have. Does anybody else have anything they want to announce? Anything that they want to share? Okay, if not, we will move on. And what's new in Turnagain? So does anybody have anything they want to share? What's new in Turnagain going on? Okay, we'll move on then. It's too new in the year to have anything new going on.
Kathy, I apologize. It's Matt Clayman.
Hi, Matt.
A very small new thing. One of the Lineary Park neighbors had raised the topic about why wasn't there a outhouse in the Lineary Park parking lot, because we're getting so much more traffic due to people going to see the whale.
Right, and actually, I actually have that on our agenda since, we chatted and you said the Parks Department would like some kind of a formal affirmation from our council. It'll be later on in our agenda,
Well, the
under old and
Turnagain,
new business.
the Turnagain news is you don't need to take it up as a council matter, because after I talked with you, then I had a further conversation and the whale topic came up. And then I talked with the parks director about the whale traffic issue. And he thought, well, that's a new thing this year. Let me talk to the group about it. And he talked with his team, and 3 days later, the outhouse appeared. So
There's already one installed?
yes, not
Okay.
installed, but it's
Oh,
in the parking lot, and it was in within 3 or 4 days of when I talked to the parks director, and I said, the turning can bring it up, but if you think that the whale dynamic is enough to think that probably should give it a shot, maybe you should just get one placed. And he said, I hadn't thought about the whale. That's a darn good idea. So kudos to
Okay.
Mary Beth Prinz. That's all.
yes, thank you, Mary Beth. And we'll be bringing up something else that she brought up in an email under board report, executive board report as well. So thank you, Matt, for following up on that. And so we will not be having that agenda item under old and new business when we get to it. So we'll just cross that out. And I have yet to see that whale, so maybe I'll go down there and check out the porta potties and the whale in the near future. If the trail isn't icy, we need snow. Okay, anybody else under what's new in Turnagain? Okay, if not, we'll move on to executive board report. And as I typically say, it's too early to provide any kind of date on when the board will meet again for to discuss the February meeting or other business items. So just let us know if you want to be apprised of when we meet. We've been meeting via Zoom. That may or may not continue as far as our board meetings, but please just let me know if you'd like to be noticed when we pick a date, which will probably be, at least 2 or 3 weeks, but okay. Let's see. So February 6th, which is the first Thursday of the month, is when our next general membership meeting is. So we just always meet the second Thursday of the month in January because it's so close to New Year's Day and after the new year. So just be apprised of that. And the link to zoom into our meeting, assuming we'll have it as Zoom meeting, and I think we will, we'll go back to the one we usually use. We had a different one just for this meeting because we were on a different date. And so just so you keep that in mind, we're back to the first Thursday of the month next month. And our Zoom link will be the one that was used in December and months before that. And that will be provided on the meeting notice when they get sent out. So the next item under executive board report is the Minnesota Drive and I/L Streets corridor plan. So R&M Consultants is working on this, contracted by the municipality, I believe, or DOT, DOT. And they have put together an advisory committee. And I had reached out to Juan Lee, who is managing, once with the Muni. Sorry, excuse me. But anyway, she's the manager with the planning department, and R&M Consultants is also working on this. But there was a Turnagain resident representing our area, which TCC was not notified about at the time, but serving on the AMAT's Technical Advisory Committee. This person is now serving on the AMAT's Technical Advisory. So Juan would like to see a different Turnagain representative. Spenard, North Star, and South Addition Community Councils all have representation on this. I had indicated to Juan a few months ago that I was kind of interested in this. And so she reached out to me, and the board discussed this and felt like I would be the best person since I had showed interest in it previously to serve on that advisory committee. So FYI, but is there anyone who may have an objection to the board's decision to have me represent the council on this? Okay. All right, well, that's great.
Kathy?
And I have no idea when we'll meet again, but if anybody wants to, be informed about what's going on, let me know. Yeah, Steve.
Kathy, could you just take a second and describe that? I'm not familiar with that corridor.
Well, I think they're just kind of in the phase of what do we need to do to improve Minnesota and INL Street corridor? Clearly there's no real clear pedestrian or bike amenities. I'm not sure if they're looking at reducing speed. I don't know, since I haven't been privy to previous meetings of this advisory group. So I'm just guessing at this point. I don't know if there's anything on the website anywhere, because I just, wanted to run this past the board is with regard to, I didn't hear from Juan until late December on this, and the request to have somebody from the Turnagain CC on this body. So I haven't really taken the chance to look into it too closely.
Kathy, this is Graham Downey. I'd be happy to highlight at least one thing I think is really exciting about the project.
Yes, please. Yes, go ahead, Graham.
Yeah, so I think one thing we've been talking about as part of the Vision Zero collaborative working group that the Muni is doing with DOT is this Minnesota IL could be a candidate for some pilot lane drops, which would be something we're looking at doing around town potentially as soon as next summer to improve safety on the roads. So could be a really exciting chance to pilot a new way of improving traffic safety. I know there's lots else going on with the study too, but that's something that might be happening in the very near term.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. Okay, anybody have any questions for Graham since he filled us in?
The only other question I have is that like between 8th and 7th or 9th? Is that what we're talking about?
I'm actually not sure what segment of Minnesota we're talking about, but since INL are included, I'd imagine it's a little more centered on downtown. But if you all are invited, it must be coming close to you.
Thank you.
I have
Kathy,
a question, Kathy.
Yes, John. Yes, sorry, I apologize.
Graham, you mentioned something about lane drop. Does that mean they're gonna cut a lane out of Minnesota's traffic?
Yeah, potentially for part of, and this is all very, very tentative, but the idea was we've seen some elsewhere in the city, we've seen that removing a lane of traffic when, for example, on the Pine Street bike lane, a lot of the benefit of that project was a reduction in excessive speeding. Since when people have those sort of wide open freeway feeling roads, it tends to promote speeding. So depending on traffic volumes, if it was justified, there might be a reduction somewhere along the corridor. But I hesitate to speculate with too much more specificity than that. And it would not happen without lots of public notice and feedback. So if you had concerns about the location or extent, then that'll all be things the team would love to hear. So you should tell Kathy.
Okay, anybody else have any questions for Graham? Okay, great. And depending on when the committee meets again, I'll be reporting back to the council on what's taking place. I don't know how often they've been meeting or, what they've done to this point. So, okay, great. Okay, next item on the agenda is another thing that Mary Beth Prince brought up in an email to me, along with the restrooms at Laneri Park due to the increased volume of people parking there to go look at the whale. And I'll just read this really quickly. She said since 2003, she's been a member of the Trail Watch program that was started by Mayor Mark Begich. The program was started because women were getting attacked on the trail, and the mayor thought that there should be a group of organized volunteers to help out. So she lives near Laneri Park. And so as a Trail Watch volunteer, she goes out on the trail every day. She monitors it. She's cleaned off graffiti, helped users, and reported significant issues to park maintenance. And just as an aside, FYI, Dan and I also signed up for it way back then. And we may or may not still have our official armbands, but we haven't considered us as active Trail Watch volunteers for quite some time. But it's good to know that at least one person, and kudos to Mary Beth Bean and Turnagain, that she's kept an eye on the coastal trail and continues to do that. So she has asked subsequent mayors to continue the program and had volunteered to run it, but no one has seemed interested. So several of her friends has asked her to start the program because they want to help, but she thinks it should go through municipal channels and have municipal support. So she just threw out, how can we get this program restarted? And so I said I would bring it up at the meeting, and it doesn't mean that we're going to have a big discussion about it, but I think it'd be interesting to get anybody's response here of what people may be thinking in terms of if anybody's familiar with that program that was started back then, if anybody has any interest to see the municipality start that up again. Anybody have any thoughts? No thoughts one way or the other? Did anybody else sign up for that way back when?
I think it would be interesting to see what the mayor's group team might have to say about it. And I wonder if some of the folks who are interested in seeing the completion of the Fish Creek Trail might have some ideas about how to energize and organize, if there's any interest in those groups about that. Just a couple thoughts.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Any other thoughts on this at this point? We'll just kind of leave it out there and see what may happen. I told the board that I think this is something that I could bring up at the FCC delegate meeting in January to see if other councils for other trails, not just the coastal trail, but other trails have any interest in reviving that program. I think if it were more of a broad show of support from various community councils or neighbors in town, trail users in town, it might gain more traction. So if that's okay with everybody, I'll bring it up at the delegate meeting later on this month and see where it goes from there. Sound good? Okay. Let me write that down.
Hey Kathy, I one other thing I wanted to bring more up. I really don't know much about that program. I don't know how much other people do either. It'd be nice to have a place where somebody would explain, or I could explain that program.
Well, it was all volunteer. I mean, I don't remember a lot of specifics, but you had to officially sign up for it through the municipality. You were provided a bright green band to wear on your arm. So that when you were out and about and taking on that role, you were identified as such. If you went to, go pick up trash, or what are you guys doing over there? Well, we're with Trail Watch, and explain to them why you're out there as a official volunteer. And that's really all it entailed. I mean, they just had to have a record of you as a official Trail Watch user and volunteer, and you didn't have to report back anything unless, of course, there was something to report back to the Parks Department or any other authority. But it was just a feel good, do something. If you're out there using the trail anyway, why not put yourself at a kind of a little bit of a higher volunteer level and go the extra mile in terms of picking up trash or seeing if visitors have any questions about you know, how to get to the airport from the coastal trail, or, you know, who knows? There was just anything could come up. But if you were identified as somebody, an ambassador of the trail, basically, then you might get asked questions. So, or be able to provide information. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions? Okay, we will move on to the FCC delegate report. Or excuse me, let's see. The next item is response protocol when assistance is needed. And I know that sounded vague. I wasn't sure how to go about describing this, but I got a phone call yesterday from Emily Ninon. She is a resident of Turnagain, so some of you might know her. She's with the Anchorage American Cancer Society, but she didn't call me for that reason at all. Her and her husband were driving home on Tuesday night, going west on West Northern Lights, kind of in the Forest Park Drive area, in that kind of general location of West Northern Lights, past the post office, and then, you know, going toward kind of down the hill, and then as it angles toward Forest Park Drive. And they saw barely, because this woman was in dark clothing and it was dark out, and there wasn't really any bright street light right in that spot, like Arlington, or, you know, kind of in that general area as you go down that hill. But they saw a woman in a wheelchair stuck in a snow berm off of the sidewalk trail there. And so it went from there. She was very cold, disoriented a little bit. To make a very long story short, they weren't sure what to do. So they called 311 and said, can an officer respond? And she's, you know, in the snow berm, and it turns out she got off on the wrong bus stop, and it turns out that ultimately they were familiar with this woman and she had done that before. And they said that they would send out an officer, but then they waited, and ultimately got transferred to the fire department. Fire department asked if there was a medical emergency, and they said no. So then they said, we need to go back to, or they need to contact Community Service Patrol. And so fire department did. That's their next step that they do. And they came and they gave her a breathalyzer, and she passed it, even though Emily said that she had smelled alcohol in this woman's breath. And they said there's nothing they can do because they only deal with inebriated people. So, so bottom line is, ultimately a police officer did respond. He actually was familiar with this woman. She said he was very, very kind and resolved the issue. But that was in a 2-hour time frame where her and her husband, Emily and her husband, were with this woman that was in a wheelchair that's stuck in a snow berm along West Northern Lights. And so she called me to ask me if I was familiar what they could have done differently. Is there not a better protocol in place when something like this comes up? And I said, you guys probably went way above and beyond anything that I would have known what to do. And I said I would share it. And that's what she asked me to do, is just share it when she realized we were meeting this evening. So Karen, go ahead.
Thanks, Kathy. I just want to let the body know that Matt Clayman's got to pop off at 7:15. So if we want to give him 6 minutes, we should pivot if everybody's okay with that agenda change.
Okay, yes, I apologize.
So like to
I
follow
can't.
up on this one with you.
Yeah, thank you. It's hard for me to follow chat and do this at the same time, so
No
thanks
problem.
for doing that. So I apologize. If that's okay with everybody, Matt, would you like to go ahead and give your legislative report?
Sure. Thanks for taking me a little out of order. And Happy New Year, everybody. Appreciate that you actually didn't do the meeting last week when I think it would have been hard for everybody to get here. I think one of the big issues this year will be, of course, the budget. The governor has released his proposed budget. It includes a fairly large dividend. That's the biggest item in the budget. A couple of interesting items in the budget that he vetoed last year as line item vetoes. He's added them in this year. One's a cemetery in Eagle River, and another to get the University of Alaska to R1 status as a university, which is a really important research status to keep for a major state university. But I think the governor's budget is going to be a starting point, and it's going to lead to lots of interesting discussions. And I know this community council usually has at least some specific requests for Turnagain, and make sure you keep us informed on those things as we move forward. We've got our constituent meeting on Tuesday, the 14th of January at the Anchorage LIO from 5 to 6. Pretty sure there'll be pizza there. And I know a couple of the representatives after the meeting, our two West Side representatives, I think, are getting on the 7:30 flight that evening. So we'll be on a pretty even schedule, but that's what's going on, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Matt, I have a question. Is the CAPSIS program for providing input on projects, is that still open? I've kind of lost track of that whole timeline.
It's definitely not closed. I'm actually, with the new session coming on, I think it was opened several weeks ago, and it's still open. It won't close till sometime after we go to session.
Okay. Well, we have our approved capital improvement program list that we approved last year. So, it would make sense for us to just go ahead and provide maybe some requests for a project or two on that list. So.
Yep, totally support that. And I mean, I always encourage folks to put the whole list in and just make sure you put it in priority order.
Oh, and that we can do because we do prioritize. So.
Yeah, I mean, listing more than we have money for is not a problem, as long as we know your priority. That makes it easier for us to make decisions.
Okay, great. Yeah, that I can do that. Okay. Anybody else have anything for Matt? Okay, and your report did get sent out with our meeting notice yesterday, so thanks so much for providing that. A lot more detail.
Thank you all, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Hey, Happy New Year. Okay, so we'll go back to executive board report, and I had just kind of concluded about my conversation with regard to the incident that happened, and don't know if anybody has some enlightenment on if there would be a better way for citizens like Emily and her husband to know what to do. And you may run into something like this. Could be on the coastal trail, could be on a trail. But she was just shocked in the end that it took 2 hours from the moment they saw her, which was by luck, and the moment that the ultimately the APD officer came by and helped her and assisted her. And in the meantime, it was pretty cold out, and they stayed with her, but she was getting colder, and it seems like it shouldn't take that long. But anybody have any thoughts about? Yeah, Steve.
There are two programs. There's crisis intervention programs. There could be anything from mental health problems and things like this. They would probably in some ways assess her and what her mental health issues are. And I would imagine she has a tremendous amount of mental health issues, being it cold and her being stuck out there. But they're very accessible, and those contact with those folks can be done through 911 or what is it, 313 311.
Well, their initial action was calling 311 and described the situation.
Yeah,
And
and that number is for less crisis than needing immediate fire response or police response. These are
Well, I guess they
specific-
didn't consider it, like a crisis. They just needed someone to help her out. But so I guess that's just a judgment call that anybody would, need to make on
Yeah.
that one. And they described what was going on with 311, so they weren't recommended, oh, well, we'll get this to 911 or you call 911. From there, it went to Community Service Patrol. Oh, no, the fire department. And then the fire department through Community Service Patrol. And then it kind of went full circle to an APD officer responding. So just seems like there should be a better way for us,
Well,
for
after,
that to be here.
after doing a ride along with the police department in that area, that would fit. And anybody who wants to do a ride along, it's would be an 8-hour program. You can call me and I can give you the particulars about that. But for that police, unit.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're just an average citizen who sees somebody stuck in a snow berm with a wheelchair, you shouldn't have to go through that program to find out what's going on. But
Well,
anyway,
I think it'd
Kathy,
be,
I'd be
So,
happy to
can
weigh
help.
in if it's useful.
yeah, Graham.
Yeah, I think, it's a really sad story and thanks for sharing it. It is not the first time. I think 311 is the best choice for folks. And we are aware that this is a problem. And it's a problem for two reasons. One is there's like a little bit of back end work we need to do to make sure that police and fire systems are talking to each other. Right now, they don't. And my colleague Thea is leading that effort to make sure we're all coordinated on the back end so that it's much easier for citizens to get routed to the right place when they call 311. So it's definitely an issue we're aware of and trying to fix. I think, this is also an illustration of the issue of all the vacancies in the police department. We're just at pretty limited capacity there. And so that's an unfortunate reason for that delay.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Graham. And the good news is she was helped and kudos to Emily and her husband for being, good neighbors and saw
Kathy?
her. Yes. Yeah.
Uh, so I pre
Karen, you've frozen on us if you can hear me. Let's see. Well, we'll see if we can get her back on.
requested through the email
Oh.
portal or online portal app. Well, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, now we can hear you. again.
So I previously requested a Anchorage Police Department community liaison visit to our community council for November or December, and I didn't hear back. So I'll try again for February or March, and I'll put this and a couple other things like how to engage Trail Watch, just how to there were concerns that were brought to this community council about particular house in an area that was having lots of coming and going, and just how to deal with stuff and see if we can't get a APD community liaison officer to talk to us about those kinds of issues, and
Okay.
see if I can't make it happen for February or March. I think that might be the best chance to follow up on some of this.
Sure, and thanks, Karen,
Thanks.
for doing that. Sure. Yeah, when we met in person way back when, every once in a while, people from the fire department or the Anchorage Police Department would just kind of show up at our meeting at the beginning of the meeting and say hello and see if anybody had any questions or wanted to chat about anything. And that was very useful, very helpful. Not so much since we've gone on to the Zoom situation, but yeah, it'd be great to hear from them. So thanks, Karen, for following up on that. Okay, the next item on the agenda, still under Executive Board Report, is the FCC Delegate Meeting Report, and we met on December 18th. That was a good meeting. Kind of the highlights were we passed a resolution thanking the Assembly, the Clerk's Office, and the Ombudsman at the Muni for supporting the FCC's request for increased funding for 2025. So that was approved by the Assembly. And so now both Ari and Ally are full-time staff at the FCC office, which, since they are doing a lot of work right now to kind of revamp internally, how FCC is as an organization is being run, I think will be very helpful, and that'll just give added support to all the 36 or 7 community councils that use the FCC. And we discussed an FCC privacy policy, and that had to do internally with, who has access to community council emails and, budget things and so forth. And so it was good internal policy for us to go ahead and endorse. The FCC website for all of our community councils is being worked on, and I don't know really where they're at in the process. I'm hoping they will have kind of a draft version and then run it past all the councils for input. So that's what I'm looking for next. Barb Jones gave the mayor's report and covered numerous things and answered various questions. And so it was great to have a representative from the mayor's office at the FCC delegate meeting. And hopefully at some point, maybe, in the future, we can even have the mayor, or I know Graham, thank you for attending on behalf of the mayor's office. We really appreciate that. At some point, maybe we'll see the mayor herself, even if it's just briefly, but we appreciate everything that the Muni does to support our community councils. And we were talking about budget items, and I happened to bring up, just in the context of that discussion, about if the West Anchorage Community Councils organize a spring candidates forum before the April 1st election. She said to be sure, and Ari said to be sure and contact FCC on costs and so forth, because there are things within the FCC budget that can support outreach programs like a candidates forum. So we definitely have to collaborate with FCC as far as some of our budget. So that was the main things that we discussed. It was a good meeting, and then we do meet again in a couple of weeks. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but it's the 3rd Wednesday of the month coming up. And of course, anybody is welcome to attend. So I'm the delegate, and Karen is the alternate, and really appreciate our involvement on that at the level that it is. Okay, so we're at reports, and do we have an assembly member in attendance? Anna, you are here. There you are.
Yep. Hello.
Welcome. Happy New Year. Thanks, Anna.
Yeah, same to you guys. So I have just a few updates, but before I do that, I'm going to make one disclosure. Sorry, I'm letting a cat out of the room. I'm going to make one disclosure related to TCC, which is that apparently I am still, this is a little in the weeds, but I'm still the bank signer on the account, even though, of course, I've not been involved since 2022. So Kathy and I have been coordinating. That came up, one, because there was a check that needed to be deposited. So I did that into TCC's account, not into my account. I did not otherwise touch the money, just to be clear. And then also the account had gone dormant because it's not being used very often. So I say that only to say that happened, but I am not in possession of any of your money. And also, I know the next step this month, or whenever we can get it together, is to switch over the signers to the current officers. So just wanted to get that out of the way. But again, my intent is not to touch your money or be involved in that. So we'll get that done.
Well, but thank you for doing that, Anna. So that had to be done before the end of the year. So I appreciate that. And so Kathleen and I and you will definitely need to coordinate. Probably it's going to be, when's a good time for you, Anna? Because I have a feeling, as far as scheduling, yours is going to be the most, booked. Right now, Kathleen is in New York, but I know she is coming home within, a short period of time. So once she gets back in town, we can coordinate something.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there. But so actually, assembly updates then. So I'll share 3 things and then happy to answer questions. One is we are in the middle of another one of our big pieces of the budget cycle, which really involves the voters as well, and that is what goes to the ballot on April 1st. So Kathy covered candidates and filing for that, but I'm talking about things like bonds, charter amendments, and anything that requires voter approval. So we're in the middle of that. There's a hard deadline in our code that says we have to have all of that done. I think it's 70 days, or I forget what the math is, but essentially our January 21st meeting is the last time that we can act on those things. And so we already approved the school bond, and again, you'll hear a lot more information about all these bonds. So I'll just let you know where we're at, because there is still a public hearing opportunity on some of them. We passed the school bond that we got from the school board and the school district. They could certainly speak to more of what's in there. I know it's a lot of repair projects or upgrades like that. No new buildings this time, to my knowledge. Another one is the mayor has proposed 2 special tax levies. So those are not bonds. They're similar to actually how we pay for body cams now, that was approved by voters. And that's allowing collection of a small amount of money. One of these is for police vehicles, and the other one is for heavy equipment for snowplows or things like snowplows. So those are things, of course, you've probably seen in the news. We are very behind on replacing our fleet. Cars with 150,000 miles or more, 200,000, 300,000, very overdue to get our fleet starting to be replaced in rotation, especially for police cars. So anyway, so those are 2 things you'll see on the ballot. Again, you'll hear more information about that. The things that we have not taken action on yet that we will take action on at our next meeting is things like the park bond. I believe there is a proposed facility bond. Our ARDSA road and drainage bond. We live in that service area like most of the urban core of the city. And a public safety bond. I forget, there's a few of them. And so those are all the remaining ones are going to be on our agenda for January 21st as public hearing items. So of course we made, I'll just note one amendment that we made back in November that I will make sure is in the bond, but I think it got carried forward, is the additional funding to finish Forest Park Drive, the repaving of that. So not a full rebuild or anything, but resurfacing that road. So that should still be in there, but I will double check. And so just in general, if you want to be involved in those, of course, the assembly's role in that is really to approve what goes on the ballot, but then ultimately it's up to voters to decide. So if you have strong feelings about those, you will have an opportunity to make your voice heard there. Next, related to the ballot somewhat, and also things that I know folks have been tracking, Project Anchorage. So the proposed sales tax that was brought forward by AEDC and a lot of other businesses in a coalition. We had a big meeting on Tuesday. There's basically 5 different substitute versions out there, 5 different ideas. And so that includes the assembly sponsors who are carrying AEDC's version and several others. And so really, before we even got into that, we passed a resolution on Tuesday that says if any of those move forward, any version of that Project Anchorage ordinance that goes to the voters, regardless of what's in it, that we would hold a special election in fall 2025. And the discussion there was, I think, regardless of how you feel about this proposed tax, I think it is not ready to put before voters. There was not consensus on what it should look like. There's a lot of work to do there. And so really, as I said, we would have had to figure that out by the 21st or less than 2 weeks from now. So rather than trying to meet that artificial deadline and really, something that might compete with all those other bonds and other things on the ballot, this is a big question. And if and when it does go to voters, it should be, at least in my estimation, and now by resolution, it should be its own question to voters. So again, not that we will have a special election, it's that if that happens, it will be taken care of at a special election. And of course, there's a lot of space between a lot of these proposals, and so I honestly can't predict what's going to happen. I do hope that we can come to a more more of a consensus or more agreement on that. But that's really up to, of course, people other than me as well. So also, if you have thoughts on that, it will come back to us and the assembly on March 4th at our meeting. But of course, there's going to be a lot of work before then. So check out the assembly website, includes a page on Project Anchorage, has all those versions, and then definitely reach out to the sponsors of those versions, especially the folks working with AEDC are Randy Solt and Felix Rivera. So in particular, if you want to give comments, I would focus on those folks because they're the ones trying to trying to connect the business coalition's ideas with, the wide variety of other ideas we've heard. So that's the update on that, but you will not see that on the April 1st ballot. And then lastly, I'll cover just some quick updates on zoning ordinances. So one of them, because one of them is an upcoming opportunity to learn more about it. One is the ordinance, that we passed on Tuesday that essentially exempts housing projects in B3, so business zones, from requiring residential design standards. And that passed on Tuesday. The idea being that, of course, B3 or business zoning, picture places like Midtown, not downtown because they have their own zoning, but places like that, really, the Diamond Mall, those are all probably B3 properties, and they don't really look residential, right? They're really busy commercial areas. And these are rules that don't apply to commercial properties. So there's not the same rules as far as building articulation, windows, all those things for commercial. And so the idea was, if we're really trying to build more housing, let's make that easier to do. And let's not treat housing as having more negative impacts than other uses. So that passed on Tuesday. Another one that is coming up that I know some folks in this council are going to be interested in is a proposed moratorium or a pause on application of those residential design standards, not related to B3, but saying, okay, we're going to pause this part of the code for 3 years. That's the proposal. And the idea is that we've heard a lot of feedback, and I know the very short version of this is, I know this was a big discussion in the community for a long time, what our zoning code should be, how we should regulate housing, et cetera. And so this pause is saying, let's let the developers innovate. Let's see what we get. I think there's a lot of concern that we'll see, some of the worst development that we saw in the 70s. I think it's also reality that that's not what's getting built anymore, especially new construction. But again, I know this is going to be a big topic. So that will be on our agenda on February 11th. We postponed it until then. And in the meantime, I have arranged a presentation, actually working with the Federation of Community Councils. They did recently a format called Local Lens. It was a 1-hour Zoom presentation, and really it's a chance to do more of a deep dive than you can do at their regular meetings, and really that you can do at a council meeting. So that will be on Wednesday, January 22nd, and it will be in the evening, 6:30 to 7:30. And so we're going to talk about that ordinance that I mentioned, the residential design standards pause, and we're also going to get a little bit of a history lesson too. I've enlisted my friend John Weddleton. He and I are going to co-present. Of course, he's not on the assembly anymore, so he's not working on this ordinance, but he certainly has a lot of the history on the Title 21 rewrite, and we've had some good dialogue about it, and so I'm excited about that. So I will share more information. There will be a graphic, and it will go out through the FCC channels, but just a heads up, Wednesday the 22nd.
Anna, could I
Yep.
interrupt? Now that is the night of our regular FCC delegate meeting. So what time did you say this one is?
So we scheduled for Wednesday the 22nd. I believe the third Wednesday is the 15th, because I was working with Ari.
I apologize. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't conflict with.
Okay, thank you. So this is the fourth Wednesday.
Yeah. And
Excellent.
like I said, she's going to make a graphic. We don't have that to send out yet. And then lastly, just very briefly, then I'll get to questions. Another zoning ordinance that is not as far along in the process, but I've been working with, and I see John Isaacs' hand up as well. It's looking, again, a piece of code that has been paused already, that was adopted very recently, that deals with site access. So basically the interaction between your property and the street. So it's dealing with driveways, how much of your frontage can be paved, all of those issues. Really, I think there's a lot of good intent in those codes, but they have caused a lot of problems in implementation. And so I've been working with others in a working group since the fall, of which John Isaacs is a member, and some developers and a few other community members. And really working with planning department, working with our staff, really, mayor's office folks. Graham has been in those meetings, really just trying to talk through kind of what the goals are for that. What do we want these codes to do? And then how do we make changes to those codes to get there? So that ordinance you will hear a lot more about. It is moving to Planning and Zoning Commission. It just got drafted I actually haven't read it yet either, but we've been working through the working group process and expect to see that on the Planning and Zoning Commission agenda for March 3rd. So that's a little ways out, and then there's going to be some additional outreach as well. So that's just a heads up that, you know, as we know, housing's a huge issue. We keep working through these various zoning proposals, and so those are just 3 to highlight. So I will stop there and take some questions.
Okay. Thanks for all the info, Anna. Does anybody have any specific questions? John?
So a couple questions. Thanks, Anna, for the references to the task force. And you know, there's a couple of task forces that I have been on that I will, or working groups that I'll report on under the land use committee. And I think the outputs aren't right for formal TCC comment yet, but it's interesting to hear that one of them is being drafted and slated for planning and zoning on the 3rd. With regard to the pausing the residential design standards, I have to admit that I saw that on the assembly agenda while I was traveling. Didn't have a chance to pull down that ordinance, but is that has that been introduced for public hearing on February 11th? And if so, is it available to get a copy of somewhere?
Yes, I can send it. And then actually this is one, there were 3 ordinances that I worked on with a couple others. All of those got introduced back in October. And then we actually set the public
Yeah.
hearing deadline or date for January 7th, way back. And then of course,
Great.
January 7th turned into a very large meeting anyway. So we postponed this one that I'm referring to until February 11th. So I'll send you a copy, but that might be why you missed it, because we almost introduced it, you know, very early and then it was just out there. So, so yeah, I'll definitely send that to you.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it. That's all my comments.
Okay. Anybody else have a question for Anna? I think I had another question, but now I don't really remember it. As far as the the project anchorage tax. I know I've talked to just a handful of people and not done a lot of outreach at all. But everybody that I've communicated with on this is concerned about how, you know, when it was just one proposal instead of now it's morphed into clearly a lot of different versions. But when that first proposal came out, you know, how that project list got initiated, because the general feeling was, I probably will support this. I like the concept of this, but I don't like some of the projects on it. So I'll probably vote no. And so, you know, it was confirmed that, you know, there was no outreach community councils. So I'm just wondering who did, you know, come up with that list, and if moving forward community councils could be more engaged, because all of us have CIP projects that seems like would be a real wealth of sources to pick projects out of, instead of ones that have kind of, I don't know. I mean, that's just the feeling I got from people I talked to at that time. Not that's pre all of these other versions coming up.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I can share. Well, one, I'm not one of the sponsors, so I was not directly involved in that process, but they did give some periodic updates at work sessions and so on. So I think there's 2 things that are true. One is that they did engage in a process. I think they did make a good faith effort to reach out to folks. They did a survey. They basically asked folks to submit projects. So they got a whole list of, you know, everything from a very specific thing to you know, let's improve our trails, right? So they had a whole list of things from the public, at least those who were aware of and took that survey. And then they had a committee that went through. So I think the one thing that's true is they did a process, but we've heard from a number of folks from different kind of constituencies or parts of town that they were not aware of that, and so they felt like there was not enough process. So you're not alone, and if you're hearing that from others, I guess that's not surprising, which is unfortunate, but I also know they did make a good faith effort. The other thing that's true from what they presented to us was, in addition to that survey, they did actually go back and look at community council lists. They looked at CIP lists, and I think they had a whole prioritizing system that I can't speak to in detail. But I think one of them was, is this already on a list, or has this already been talked about? And I'll just pick on one, the Chester Creek Sports Complex. I think that one is one of the ones that they put on the list as a project that's been around for a while. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know that idea has been around for a while, you know, really rebuilding down there. So So yeah, I think that would be a good question to reach out to Jenna Wright at AEDC. I know they have a website. I'll try to find it. It's the Project Anchorage website, and they have information. But also, like I said, you are not alone to be someone who said, I haven't heard about this or didn't have a chance to participate.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Anna? So again, thank you, and we'll be in touch on scheduling a bank trip and do that, get that business taken care of. So let's see. We will move on to now let's jump down to a legislative report again, because I see our representative Carolyn Hall is with us. So hi Carolyn, Happy New Year.
Hello. I wasn't expecting to say anything, but Happy New Year. I was just kind of like trying to keep up with all the things that are going on with Turnagain Community Council. Sorry, my lighting isn't that great. Yeah, I think the only thing really that I have to report is to reiterate what Senator Clayman shared, which is we're having the pre-session constituent meeting Tuesday, the 14th from 5 to 6 p.m. at the LIO in the conference room there on the first floor. Really looking forward to meeting more folks and to hearing what everybody wants us to be working on in Juneau, what the concerns are, priorities that we should be working on, but then also just kind of trying to give our best forecast at this point as far as what we might expect to come about during the session. I feel really great about being named co-chair of the Labor and Commerce Committee with Representative Zach Fields. And then the rest of our committee assignments have not yet been finalized, but so far so good with how that's kind of plugging along. I'm actually moving down to Juneau tomorrow morning, and I'm going to spend the weekend getting settled there before coming back Monday, Tuesday for some meetings, and of course the pre-session constituent meeting Tuesday evening before, as Senator Clayman mentioned, jetting immediately to the airport to get down to Juneau for 3 full long days of training at the Capitol. So swearing in and everything gets kicked off on Tuesday, January 21st. Really looking forward to it, and I look forward to keeping in touch with everybody here with TCC. And of course, the other community councils that are part of this district, which is Spenard and Sand Lake. My phone number remains the same, so please feel free to reach out at any time, text or call. And my email address is rep.carolyn.hall@akleg.gov. I can receive email at this point to that email address. However, I cannot send email out from that email address until the 21st after the swearing in. So happy to answer any questions if anybody has any, but otherwise I'm happy to slink back into the background and continue packing for tomorrow.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. Does anybody have any comments or questions for our new representative about ready to head down to Juneau?
Thank you, Karen, for putting that in there. That's
Looks
great.
like you are off the hook, and for now,
For now.
and hope to see you at the constituent meeting.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much, and thank you for continuing to stay engaged and participating in the community council process. It's really important. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's see. Next school board report, and I'm not sure I see anybody from the school board, so no school board report. Let me check to see how we're doing on time, because we got to start late, so I apologize. Let's go down to airport report then, and I see that Eric Peterson is with us. So hello, Eric, and you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. This month is quite slow at the airport. Generally speaking, right after New Year's, we start to slow down. I don't know if you guys saw about a week and a half ago, right before New Year's, our parking lots got completely full, 100% for a couple days. And now we're back down to only 50% being full. It's very nice. So the big things I wanted to talk about is just the new routes. So there was an announcement from Alaska Airlines. Some of you might have seen it, but Alaska Airlines is introducing 2 new routes out of Anchorage next summer. So they're going to have a direct to Detroit and Sacramento.
Wow.
So Delta already flies to Detroit, so you have that option. And then this will be the first time we have ever a direct Anchorage to Sacramento. And then Fairbanks will also be getting a direct from Fairbanks to Portland. So hopefully there will be some more announcements. Keeping my hopes up for this summer. And there was WestJet, of course, the Canadian airline flying from here to Calgary that will start next summer. The other thing is we wanted to thank everybody who came and voted on our kids' holiday art contest this Christmas. I get to next week, actually, one of the schools won a couple different like spaces. So I'm actually going to go to the school, and we received so many gifts from our airport tenants. I'm going to pass them out to the campfire after school program, which is really fun. I get to be basically like mid-January Santa. And then the other thing we wanted to, of course, remind everybody, I'm sure you know, with the weather right now, especially how it keeps like freezing, unfreezing, freezing, unfreezing, please don't go out on Lake Hood. We haven't had anybody. There was somebody that fell through the ice back in October, and we haven't had anybody recently. The gentleman did survive, don't worry. And of course, if you see anybody go out there, please call 911 as fast as possible. The airport police and fire are trained for any rescue operations out on Lake Hood. That's where they actually practice. And don't let your dog go out there. My dog has sometimes gotten close to the lake, and I'm like, oh no. It's very tenuous situation right there right now. And yeah, that's kind of our update. We're gonna go. February is our slowest month, but everything's kind of slowing down right now.
Okay, I've got a couple things, but does anybody have any questions they want to ask Eric? No? Okay. Well, one, I thought you might mention it, but I got an email, and since you didn't, I'll go ahead and let everybody know. So the Lake Hood Seaplane Base office has officially moved. So they are now inside the North Terminal. And so I don't know how often you may visit them in their office. It's been quite a while since I had physically been in their office, but Cheryl McDowell did indicate to us that that they have moved. So you have to go get the ticket and the parking lot and all that, but it's not a big deal. So just FYI on that. And then our board did notice that there's 2 leases. We got notice of 2 leases for general aviation, and we discussed those at our board meeting and realized the locations that they're at are locations that our community council hasn't identified in any way of, that we would have problems with any kind of activity in those 2 locations. So, if anybody's got specific questions, hang on, I just dropped my file. Maybe you could take the lead on showing them where it's at, or I can, but we're not going to be weighing in on them. Comment periods on one is at the end of January and one in February. So,
I think those were the successive leases ones.
Let's see. One is for Airplane Hangars Inc. on a successive lease.
Mhm.
And then the other one is Airplane Hangars Inc. successive lease. Oh yeah. I don't even know what successive lease means, but
Oh, it just means they already had an existing lease, and that lease term was for however many years, and they just want to renew the lease.
Oh, okay. Sorry. And sorry, that second one I don't think is a successive lease. It's for, yes, it is. Yeah. So both of them are.
Yeah.
Alaska sales, aircraft sales.
Mhm.
Okay, good enough. Yeah, well, when I looked at the locations, didn't register that TCC would weigh in on those specifically. So that's a good thing. Okay, so if nobody else has anything for Eric, then we'll move on to old and new business. So first item on the agenda is an action item, and it's to provide comments on the 2025 Heritage Land Bank Work Program and 5-year management plan, which we do every year and have done for decades. So, we did send out their bulleted comments that then could be put in a letter form before comments are due on January 23rd. I gave a cursory review of the draft plan, and it's very, very similar to last year's. And so the bulleted items that, we can vote on in terms of input is pretty much what we supported last year, what we voted on last year. So if I can have a motion to move approval of, and then we can talk about it. So is anybody willing to do that?
I'll move it, Kathy.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Could I have a second? Anybody want a
This
second?
is
Karen?
Pat. I'll second the motion.
Okay. Thank you. So, let's see. I don't know if anybody can screen share what was sent out. But essentially our comments have been very, very similar for quite some time. And that is we continue to support acquiring municipal entitlement lands by the municipality, by HLB. That was that conveyance was included in the 1986 municipal entitlement land to the muni. And so there's specific parcels in West Anchorage that are still owed the municipality, and they're areas that the public has been using for parks and natural areas and recreational areas for decades, like Little Campbell Lake Park, land adjacent to Kincaid Park, DeLong Lake Park, a portion of Connors Bog Park, and two parcels where Point Warren's off Overlook and sections of the Tony Knowles Coastal Trail are located. Okay, now we have it up. So we certainly support that. And then if you want to scroll down, we traditionally have supported all of these. Then there are 2025 potential projects. I do have a typo in that, which I'll correct because I took last year's and just updated it. But parcel 4-033B, that's where the Cliff Row Center was located. And that, of course, was closed last year. And they're still in the process of deciding what they may want to do with that parcel. And so last year we had talked about, I had pointed out that that area was identified in a coastal trail document way back when a coastal trail was being envisioned as a potential area for a trail connection between to access the coastal trail between Point Warren's and Kincaid Park, because that's a pretty long stretch. So, we can continue advocating for something like that. And then next, as far as trespass and encroachment issues, there was reference to the Tesoro-Nikiski pipeline, and we just wanted additional information with regard to those easements. And then if we want to go down to potential disposals, exchanges, and transfers for in the 5-year plan, the parcels that are west of the airport that are municipally owned, we want to continue to advocate that those be transferred to the Parks Department for permanent protection of the Tony Knowles Coastal Trail and associated natural open space buffer. And the 2001 Anchorage Comprehensive Plan, the West Anchorage District Plan, and the 2040 Land Use Plan. I think that's a typo with comprehensive plan. Anyway, they all support this. And then moving down, land management, conservation easement management, that they had included a lot more language in previous plans as early or late as 2020, and then they removed a lot of it since 2020. So we've continued to put that in our comments that we'd like that language included. It was just more of a comprehensive discussion about how HLB is actually doing a very good job managing conservation easements that for land that the municipality has owned but hasn't been put into play in any actual departments yet. And same with the policies. We'll review the policies to make sure, there's nothing in there, but I haven't heard of any changes from last year. So that's my report on the proposed TCC language that we would submit to HLB. So does anybody have any questions? Let's see, so,
Kathy,
sorry, let's see. Does anybody have their hands raised?
Yeah,
Karen
Okay,
Kathy,
does.
I'd like to, um,
Hi,
I'd
Karen.
like to understand what, how we think maybe that the Clitheroe site might, have any interaction with the airport expansion? Because the West Park Airport expansion is in progress, right? As far as permitting and planning goes, is there timeliness about how the Clitheroe Center and its access might be maintained or otherwise considered as this other project goes forward?
well, certainly, and now this is municipal land, so, the development of the West Air Park on airport land is separate from this land that we're talking about because this is muni land. And so, but certainly the access to that area goes through airport land. And that, you know, the road out to Clitheroe Center has always gone through airport land. And so access to that area is something that we would have to, I know the airport in previous discussions, in just kind of vague presentations, and Eric, you could weigh in on this, is that they're planning to relocate Point Warrenzoff Road out in that area as it goes around the point and heads south. That's going to be completely moved to the west, but still within their land. And so that road would still access then municipal land to the west of the airport land. So there would just be, you know, and unless the airport decides to have restricted access on that road, then, you know, hopefully the public would still be able to access that area. So Eric, I don't know if you want to, can you weigh in on that?
Eric might have popped off.
I,
And
I
Okay.
actually might be able
Oh.
to, Kathy.
Graham's
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get. We've been actually talking about the Clitheroe Center quite a bit in the mayor's office because I know it's something folks are excited as a place we could potentially use for providing services that were similar to what was provided there before. So that's something we've been exploring, including the access question, which it was believed initially that we didn't have legal access, but in fact, there is an agreement, a very old agreement between the Muni and the airport that seems to still be in effect, but Tiffany at HOB is running that down now for us. So I will flag that given that it is surrounded by airport DOT property, it may be hard to, your request to use it for coastal trail access might be hard to do. This is hard for us to build infrastructure on, or impossible for us to build infrastructure on property we don't own, and because of limits with bond council. So happy to chat more about that offline, but maybe something to consider as you make your comments on Clitheroe.
Sure. And, you know, the actual access to the coastal trail, that would, you know, technically start on municipal land, but, and then just be built, you know, as a little, you know, access lane through, you know, like land north of where the Clitheroe Center infrastructure is. But yeah, it would certainly take access through the Point Warrenzoff Drive, through the airport to, you know, be able to access that access to the coastal trail.
Pat has something to add.
Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
It was pretty much the same thing I was going to say. Even if they move Point Warrenzoff Road further west, it would you could use it. I mean, like now I use it to get out there to Clitheroe Center, and then to go across. Then from there you can access the coastal trail, and it could be done, but we would have to go through the airport. But it's something we should keep on our list. That's the most important thing, to keep it visible so that they know that we're interested in doing that.
Yeah, definitely. So that's, you know, as far as from a Heritage Land Bank, you planning document, we just want to keep reiterating that that's something that we have an interest in to pursue. And certainly there would be collaboration with the airport as well as, the folks at the Muni per se to, continue that discussion. So. Okay, does anybody else have any questions or comments on any of this letter? Okay, so why don't we go ahead and put it to a vote? So all in favor of submitting comments reflected in the document that has been shared at our meeting today, can you please raise your hand? We'll go ahead and do a hand count on this. And so Karen, if you can take the document off the screen, so we've got a full view of the voting, I would appreciate it. Okay, so everybody who supports these documents to be submitted, I forgot how I'm supposed to raise my hand. Nope, that's not it. Anyway, my vote is yes, so.
You can go to the react comments and then raise your hand there. And it'll show up on the list of people of participants.
It was so easy to just click on the hand thing before they change this. Anyway, I'm just gonna do this again.
Well,
okay.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I see 8. I don't know if husband Dan is on now or not. He's back from running so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And is there anybody else voting at all? Okay, so we've got 8.
Kathy,
Yes.
this is Kathleen Belosky. I can't raise my hand right now, but I would vote in favor.
Okay, so that's 9.
With
And-
Kathleen, I'm counting 10.
Oh, okay. I'll trust your count. Thank you, Karen. Okay, so everybody lower your hands. Is there anybody who objects to submitting these comments? So Jean and Steve, if you want to lower your hands, since you were yes votes. And John, if you want to lower your hand, since you were a yes vote. Okay, I see 0 hands up, so that motion passes. So these comments will be submitted on before the comment deadline. So thanks very much. Okay, next item on the agenda, as we can kind of skid through all this, is another action item. And those of you who are regular attendees, I know are familiar with the 10-year boundary changes topic that the municipality initiated. Well, it's been a while, sometime last year. But we have come to finally our comment letter on the boundary change proposals that the municipality put forth for review for the ones within our community council boundaries. And we did have Tom Davis here last on our meeting. I forgot which month it was, to kind of explain everything. And we've gone over this a few times. And so the resolution has a lot of information that's just the Muni provided a kind of a template, but then therefore be it resolved. And Karen, I think I'll let you go ahead and describe the 4 items that they had our council specifically review and what positions we're proposing to take on each one of those 4. If you would take that, please, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. So there were 4 proposals that directly impacted our region, and then one that impacted ours and a bunch of other regions. And they were recommendations for a study area change to merge Turnagain and Spenard community councils. The staff and boundary committee were against that. They were to increase the Spenard Community Council by removing a good portion of Turnagain Community Council footprint up to Wisconsin. It currently goes along Ship Creek, and they would move the boundary west over to Wisconsin. That was also not supported by the
Excuse me, Karen, I
boundary
might add that
committee.
Spinard Community Council did not support that recommendation either.
Yeah, and neither did the boundary committee or the staff. The 31 was an additional change, and then the final one was about Spinard Beach Park, in which the boundary committee proposed a couple of options, including having Spinard Community Council and Turnagain Community Council share the ownership, the land boundary for Spinard Beach Park. And we thought that that was a good compromise, since there's been investments made by Turnagain Community Council in that park, but also it's called Spinard Beach Park. So it seems like a good fit to share that one. So we are in alignment with the boundary committee's recommendations to maintain the status for 3 of them, and on the 4th to share the boundaries with Spinard Beach Park with Spinard Community Council. The last one that we had as a proposal that we had concerns about was the boundary survey area 40. This was not reviewed by the boundary committee. It was not put in front of them. It was only a staff action to change the boundaries of the coastlines to reflect the high tide line instead of what's been traditionally used as the low tide line. Pat, I see your hand.
I was just going to move that we support the recommendations listed here in the Turnagain Community Council resolution.
Great. And then the
Well, if Pat made a motion, then I need a second. Do I have a second?
Second, John Isaacs.
John, okay, thank you. So yeah, go ahead,
yeah,
Karen,
I'll
and go ahead and finish your kind of description.
hopefully
about
wrap up the
high
discussion.
tide stuff.
So
Thank you, Pat.
the last one would remove a significant amount of lands that are considered under community council purview in the intertidal area, and go from a low tide boundary for the community councils to a high tide boundary for the community councils, effectively removing the area where a number of our pipelines and other infrastructure, including some of the recently proposed coastal trail upgrades, would be in those intertidal areas. We think that as a staff only measure, it's problematic, and we would like them to not consider changing the boundary to the high tide line. And those were the recommendations in this document. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Karen. And just the board discussed this, especially that last one. And it's reflected in language here that, we feel like TCC would lose formal standing if they did change the boundaries to the high tide mark versus leave it to where it currently is at the low tide mark. And so past times where things have been built within that area that TCC has weighed in on and have taken positions on and participated in working groups on and the whole 9 yards, and future things like Karen suggested, proposing to relocate a section of the coastal trail out into the mud flats. Those are the kind of things that we feel like we as an active community council that have specific things we can point to in the past and probably coming up in the future that we would like formal standing on, so that we're, hopefully engaged early in a process and collaborate and serve on working groups and etc., instead of just waiting until, okay, now This is out for formal public comment and you have 30 days. We've been much more engaged in those kinds of things along our coastal line in the past and presumably would continue that in the future. So that's one that the board feels pretty strongly about and is recommending, that everybody see that perspective on things. And so as was pointed out, there's 3 we support, and then there's 1 that we do not support. So now that we do have a motion made by Pat, seconded by John. Everybody who is, well, does anybody want to discuss or have questions about any of these things?
This is Pat. I do have a comment. Having been a member of Turnagain Community Council since its inception, I think these are good comment. This is a good plan that you have put forth, and I think that it's important that we retain the low tide boundaries, because there's occasionally coastal waters comments that sometimes are needed. It's been a long time since we've had to do that, but that does happen, and we do have occasional comments regarding that, and it does affect us. Whatever happens beyond the low tide mark or out to the low tide mark affects things that happen within our community and within Anchorage. So I strongly support this particular resolution going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Anybody else have any comments or questions on this? If not, then we'll go ahead and vote. So all in favor, please raise your hand. And if you can take this off the screen again, Karen, I would appreciate it. I don't know. My thing doesn't. Oh, there, I got it. Raise hand. Okay, let's see if that works. Okay. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Steve, are you voting? You're muted. So okay. Yes, he is. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. I've got an 8. Am I missing somebody? 9?
I have 9.
Okay, thank you. Is there any opposition to this? So everybody lower your hand that is in support, and then we'll go from there. See if anybody is. So John, do you want to lower your hand? John Haxby? So is there anybody that opposes this? Okay, I've got 0. So this passes. So thank you, everybody, and we'll get those comments submitted to the appropriate parties and the planning department. So let's move on to the next item that was on the agenda that we do not have to consider is the winter installations of porta potties at Llanelli parking lot support, because that's already been done. So we'll move on to Fish Creek Trail Connection. And this is not an action item. And this is old business that we've, had been dealing with for over 2 years, and following this closely and participating at a level that we will continue to engage in. And so we had project team people and others at our December meeting, but were asked to go ahead and put this on the agenda again. And since we don't have tons of time at this meeting, we're going to have a follow-up land use committee meeting where we can have a lot more time to, look at maps, have things projected on a big wall, see a lot more detail than we're looking at probably on this. I don't know what our presenters may want to project on at tonight's meeting, but we really appreciate their participation. And so Taylor Keegan, welcome. And did I see, I'm not sure who else is on the.
Noah
Did I see
King is
Noah
here
King?
from
Oh, there you are.
DOT
Oh, Noah.
project manager. Yeah.
You're too
Matt
obvious.
Andrews, CRW.
And Matt, sorry, I did see you, Matt. It's been a while. So 3 of your 4 project team members, is that correct?
And looks like Dave Parrish just joined.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Kathy, I'm also here representing the mayor's office on this.
Okay, and Graham, of course. So welcome. And so you've got about 15 minutes or so, and then we thought we'd, give a little bit of time for any questions, but we don't want this to be a huge back and forth discussion because, like I said, we realize this has got to be at a more land use committee level. But thank you guys. So you have the floor.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Like I said, I'm Noah King. I'm the DOT project manager for the AMATS Fish Creek Trail Connection Project. Yeah, thanks for inviting us. We've been working on the environmental phase of this project for a long time, 2 years about, like Kathy said, and we are about to enter the next phase of the project, the final design phase. So it's a perfect time to give an update. Matt Edge from CRW, our design consultant project manager, is here. He's going to give a quick presentation, and then Taylor and Matt and I will be around for questions if anybody has any. Go ahead, Matt.
All right, thank you, Noah. So again, my name is Matt Edge with CRW Engineering Group. We're the design consultant working for DOT and Parks for the project. I tried to do a request to share my screen, but I'm not sure.
Karen, since you're host, can you help out on that?
Yeah, so I saw a request to share, and I said, yeah, but I am not a professional at this either. All of the sharing options seem to be open, but Matt
did we
disappeared
lose
for
Matt?
me. Yeah.
Matt just froze out.
Right.
Well, does anybody want to jump in until we can hopefully get Matt back engaged?
Kathy, maybe to provide a little bit of background for those who are here.
Yeah, John, go ahead if you want to jump
Okay,
in.
Matt, are you back or not yet?
I am back. Hey, sorry, that was just, I had a horrible timing for a computer to shut off there. So I apologize for that. That's not normal.
No problem.
I didn't mean to interrupt if you guys were in the middle of a conversation, but I was a little bit surprised I was talking just with black. All right, so we are as Noah said, we are finalizing the environmental document into that phase. As you recall, we posted on our website, which if somebody can bring up, that'd be great to share the screen. I don't see that I have the option to do that, but we have alternatives that were considered back initially during design or during the early phases of the design study report that we presented to the community. And moving forward, we're preferred alternative is the alternative S2 and N3, which essentially
you should
runs.
be able to share.
Now, can I share? Okay. Okay, great. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So trying to zoom. There we go. So as you would recall, the project is in goal is to connect the Fish Creek Trail at Northern Lights Boulevard to the Coastal Trail. And so we presented several different alternatives, kind of split the project into a north half and a south half, and presented those to the public, got and agencies, and got comments from the Turnagain Community Council and 200 plus other folks. The preferred alternative at this point is S2A or S2B and N3A, which with all but one little sliver on the very southern end stays entirely within the railroad right-of-way and minimizes impacts as much as we can to anybody adjacent to the railroad while maintaining the requirements that the railroad has for safety along the alignment. So we are right now, just addressing some comments that DOT has with the environmental document. Just wanted some more clarification and some more summarizing of the public involvement efforts. And that should be be completed here in the next few weeks, we hope. And then our project team is really refining the trail design to try to minimize the impacts to the utilities along the corridor. I'm sure people have seen the recent discussions in the news and elsewhere with regarding Marathon and their pipeline that runs along that corridor. Part of what the impetus of that was a request from our project team to pothole, which means use a Vector truck to suck up the dirt and actually physically locate that Marathon fuel line along the corridor. Some of the preliminary information we've received from Marathon really it's not very good regarding to really nail down where that pipeline is. So sometimes they're, even locates in the same area or a few feet off. So we really want to open up the ground, find the pipe, survey it, and know where it is. And then we'll be able to further refine our design based on that. As I said, the project corridor is entirely within railroad right-of-way. There's no direct impacts to the Fish Creek estuary. We will have retaining walls and adjusting the pipe elevation or the trail elevation to avoid any fill or anything within the estuary. So we're not touching it. So the alignment at the coastal trail, I know this was maybe an issue that was a surprise to some. We're planning on, I'll zoom in here so we've got a couple issues here in this area. When you come out of the tunnel at Westchester Lagoon, you have a fence along that corridor and really limits sight distance as you go on the trail. We've received actually numerous complaints from people saying, can you please fix this when you tie in the trail? And also we have quite a bit of an elevation difference between where we're going to go end up with this little switchback connection here. Quite a bit of elevation difference between where the Fish Creek Trail is and where the coastal trail is. And if we can push the coastal trail connection a little further out, a little north from where it is now, we can make the transition down from the new Fish Creek Trail down to the coastal trail a lot flatter, smoother, and then widen those curves out. So we can correct an existing deficiency and make our trail design a lot much better when we connect into the coastal trail. So we're currently planning on hosting a public open house in March 19th from 6 to 8 at the Spadard Rec Center. You guys are the first to hear, so feel special, maybe, I don't know. But those notices will go out probably next month to everybody in the area, just to let them know that they can come and see the trail or the design in more detail. And we're progressing towards the design. We should be, before the public open house, we should have more of a 65% level design, plans in hand level design for presentation. And then can start working on more specific impacts where you can kind of see where exactly the trail is being routed. And again, this is still subject to change too, because as we get more information and as we find out more information about the pipeline location and more input from other folks, and we can adjust the trail design. It's not by any means final what we present to this public open house. Just letting everybody know kind of where we're at. Design is intended to be complete this year in 2025, and then construction next year. So we actually will have a project. I'm pretty excited about that, ready to get going. I think it's going to be a great project overall and a real value to the community. But from that, I can open it up to comments or questions and anything anybody wants to talk about. Sorry for that glitch there. I don't even know how long I was out. I was scrambling to try to get back on.
Matt, it wasn't long, so you were fine. Thank you. I see Pat Redmond has her hand raised. So Pat.
I guess I'm going to be noisy tonight. I just wanted to comment on the Marathon pipeline thing. I've been involved with the Northern Lights widening way back when we widened Northern Lights to 4 lanes and with the divider. And there's pipelines underneath Northern Lights and along there. And I see no problem. Marathon can complain all they want, but we can we can go over their lines of, just like we've done with everything else. That's the only
Well, can
comment I have.
Pat, that's a great, I want to do slightly correct. We had an excellent meeting with Marathon and DOT and the railroad that we convened in the mayor's office. And I do want to really clarify, Marathon doesn't have any current objections. You know,
Oh,
they raised
good.
concerns, and along with those concerns, they proposed some tentative solutions, including increased communication with the project team. But you know, the message that they wanted us to communicate to the public after that meeting was they support the trail, they have concerns, but they believe that there are solutions for all of them. So
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay, John Haxby and then John Isaacs.
Yes, I have two questions here. Number one, exactly who chose the preferred route?
The choice, I mean, I think it's a recommendation from the design team, and the choice would be the DOT and Parks as far as who makes the final selection. But it is our recommendation that based on both the impacts and public input that we receive, that the alternatives S2B and N3A are constructed.
Okay, that's the first question I have. And second question I had is that I understand that the La Honda side of the railroad tracks, that group of houses that are in there supports running it along their roadway. Has there been any financial analysis or consideration or evaluation of running the entirety of the Fish Creek Trail along the east side of the railroad tracks all the way from Northern Lights to the Coastal Trail?
So the alternatives that you see were the alternatives that were evaluated. So, so a separate alternative that would be entirely along the east side of the railroad tracks was not evaluated. Part of that was just the fact that the Honda Drive connection was not popular at all amongst the residents. There was significant issues. The right-of-way is narrow there. We can't really encroach into the railroad right-of-way in that area much because the railroad plans on installing some additional tracks on the east side. And the residents were concerned that by placing a trail there, people are going to park along that La Honda Drive, and to access the trail, they're going to use it as a staging area, which I think is a valid concern. And given the limited amount of parking and right of way there was a lot of concern with not having the residents to be able to access that area.
But
So,
the La Honda people are in favor of that.
not from what we've heard. Yeah, no. If you have people who comments from, you can send them to me, but that's not what I've heard. Yeah.
Okay, so no evaluation was done. That's what you're saying.
The evaluations were only done for the alternatives that you see presented for you, on this map.
Okay.
Okay, John Isaacs.
I guess a couple questions and sort of comments. If I do remember correctly, there was a cost evaluation done on the running the La Honda side and what you have to do with a second bridge there. And so there is some cost that's been estimated there, which is a higher cost. That's one thing to point out. There have been sort of a lot of discussions and presentations, as Graham Downey's indicated. The mayor's office has sponsored some conversations among stakeholders. Both the AMAT's technical and the policy committees have had some presentations. And in fact, I would say if people are interested, the December 5th AMAT's technical presentation is on the project website. And you may want to look at that because it provides some additional detail about cross-section and things like that. I think there is some disagreement among stakeholders about the accuracy of some of that presentation, but it is something to look at. I guess as far as process goes, we still have questions as the Turnagain Community Council. And when we passed the resolution in 2022, we had some conditional support, things we'd like to be addressed. And I guess until we see the environmental study released, we won't really understand if some of those things are addressed, but there's sort of two particular areas that we'd like more information. And hence, I think the need for a land use committee meeting. One of those is the sort of exact alignment, property line locations, sort of embankment locations along the south side of the project where it goes along Resolution Drive. We'd like to look at that in more detail. And then I think we do have a lot of questions about the north side, where you would be relocating the coastal trail and what that would mean in terms of fill and some things like that. And that was one of our major concerns. So I think hence having a land use committee meeting that focuses on some of those things and invites a lot of the key stakeholders would be really important regarding our position. I guess the last comment I would have is that when sort of the environmental document and the 65% design is released, is there still the ability to influence and tweak that based on review of those documents, or is it a done deal? So that's kind of the last of my questions.
So just starting, so I guess I got two comments and a question. You guys wanted to look more closely at the embankments or the trail alignment along the bluff on the south side. You wanted to get more information on the coastal trail realignment in that area where the connection was. But then your question was, is there room for adjustment once the 65% design is complete in the environmental document? And that is yes. The answer to the question is yes. There's room for adjustment right up until final design, which would be 100% complete. So design is an iterative process. You start with a big picture, and then you start getting into the details. And the more you drill down into those details, the more you learn, and the more you have to refine things. So sometimes you find that you have to make a change based on something that you didn't learn until late in the game. But typically, we like to try to get closer to the finish line in a pretty logical manner and not make major changes late in the design. But we can make tweaks and changes and refinements all throughout. You've got to understand too that there's a lot of stakeholders in this group. There's a lot of people who have thoughts about how we should be routing the project, whether or not there should be a project at all, and including the railroad and Marathon Fuel. And we have to try to keep everybody happy. So we probably won't keep nobody happy at the end of it, but we'll get a trail hopefully. So.
If I could jump in, and unfortunately, the way the resolution printed out, it's weird. So John, if you have our TCC resolution that we passed 2 years ago, and on November 3rd, 2022.
Yeah, I do have it.
So if you could just go ahead and read it's now therefore be it resolved, we support the development of the trail between Western Lights and the coastal trail, subject to the following conditions.
Yep.
And my 1 and 2 got cut off. But we had 5 of them, and I just want to make it really clear. This was before we were notified months and months and months before we realized that the coastal trail was going to be affected in terms of a realignment out into the mud flats. So TCC has not taken a position on that yet because we want a lot more detail, much more detail than what is shown in the diagram that you're showing now. And we're hoping to get that, during our land use committee meeting. We're hoping you can provide a lot more detail about what's being envisioned at that point. At that location at the northern end. So John, if you can read those conditions.
I'll kind of summarize them. So I mean, basically says that the community council supports development of Fish Creek Trail connection between the West Northern Lights Boulevard and the Tony Nose Coastal Trail, subject to the following conditions. The first one was that the majority of the trail should be located on the AWWU access road. And that seems like that's off the table right now as an alternative, but that was our first condition. The second one was that we supported the alternative that starts with S1, but rather than following the top of the bluff along Resolution Drive, that it'd be closer to the fence line and away from the Resolution Drive homes. and adjacent to the AWWU access road. And so that was condition number 2. Condition 3 was we supported the N3 alternative, the northernmost connection. Condition 4 was we opposed extending the connection trail north of the coastal trail and onto the mudflats as shown as alternative N3B. And so that's one where I think we had opposed that concept and we'd like to see more detail about how that's going to be done. And then the last condition was if any of the other alternatives have been chosen, we would request an environmental assessment be conducted rather than the categorical exclusion that is currently being used. So those were our conditions.
And just so, you know, from the council's perspective through this process, even though, you know, there's been a lot of public input and a lot of support from trail users and others, we support it too. We support this project as well. We always have. Some of us, including my husband and I, are founding members of the Fish Creek Trail to Ocean Working Group that I know you have had communication with and input from other folks from that group. So this is nothing new for us from conceptually. We're all in as far as conceptually this project. The devil's in the details. And having done, you know, a couple of walkthroughs, which we really appreciated, you know, we want to make sure that this trail not only is a wonderful trail connection for users and the public at large, but because it's within our neighborhood, we want it to be a good trail for our neighborhood as well. And so we feel like if we can collaborate at a level where we can sit down at a table and almost go, you know, foot by foot, yard by yard, and see what we can do to address concerns. And then again, before we take any position with regard to what the relocation of the coastal trail looks like, we're going to need a lot more detail so that we can take a position on what that will look like. So I just want to make it clear, you know, this is where we're at as a community council. So, John, did you have a follow-up question, Haxby?
Yeah, I did. John Isaacs, I believe that one of the last conditions that was in there is that and on the trail on the northern edge of this where it approached the McCary driveway, that it was to be tunneled under his driveway.
I don't think that is necessarily the formal.
Yeah, it shows up on the drawings.
It may show, yeah. I mean, it's not one of our formal conditions to specify that, but I do know that there are some issues right now regarding both the location of how it approaches that, and there are some, I guess, different positions on who has ownership of the extension of Forest Park Drive, and you know, I know there's different positions, and I'm not sure they've been fully resolved.
But that is on the Turnagain Community Council resolution map, I think, second page.
So with regard to the tunnel underneath the driveway within the Alaska Railroad right-of-way, the area where we have the trail on the west side of the railroad tracks is also where Marathon Fuel Line is located. So even though I think a tunnel would be a great option if, you know, for grade and to allow that better connection there at the coastal trail, because the Marathon Fuel Line is co-located in that area, we would have to relocate that in order to tunnel underneath the driveway. And the cost of relocating Marathon Fuel Line is untenable for the project.
Kathy, Zach Fields has his hand up.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, Zach. Yes, Zach.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so this is on the edge of my legislative district. Forest Park is in my legislative district, and the Fish Creek Trail is actually the #1 issue that constituents bring up to me when I run into them at the grocery store on the trail system in terms of questions. So I think everyone sort of knows in the news what's going on with education, what's going on with our work to fix our broken retirement system. People have a lot of questions about this trail and, you know, keeping the trail moving. So, you know, it's hard for a large number of people to attend a 2.5-hour community council meeting right when they're trying to feed their kids and put their kids to bed. But believe me, there are a lot of people in Forest Park and South Addition in my district who want to see this trail go through. I was just at an event tonight talking to one person from Resolution Drive and another one from Forest Park Drive who were like, we should have done this project 30 years ago. So I mainly just wanted to share the breadth and depth of support. Obviously, that's expressed through the hundreds of public comments. And I wanted to thank Marathon, the mayor's office, DOT for working to address some of the just pipeline alignment issues that were discussed at the previous meeting. And, you know, honestly, the alignment pictured here is not the alignment that I as a trail user would pick. But guess what? I'm outnumbered by hundreds of people who commented publicly and by practical considerations. So, you know, at this point, I just appreciate everyone who's involved with the project, working to bring it to completion. It's a critical safety project. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, there are 1,000 little variables. And rather than litigate those for the next 3 decades and have us 3 decades from now asking, why didn't we build this trail? I hope we can move forward. Anchorage voters have voted for it over and over on bonds. And, you know, there's a bunch of working class families south of Northern Lights who don't have a safe connection. At the end of the day, that is what this trail is about. It is a critical safety project and we got to get it done. So I really appreciate everyone who over the last month, working all the way through the holidays, has been plugging away at this because it's just so important for safety. And, you know, as we've seen in the news, we have people dying on Anchorage streets once every 2 weeks. It is criminal
Zach, did you have
how
any
unsafe our roads
questions?
are. And
Zach, did you have any questions per se?
No, I just wanted to weigh in. You know,
Okay.
a lot of people weigh down this, and I just wanted to weigh in and thank again the mayor, Marathon, DOT, the whole project team for working to move it forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Zach. Did anybody else have any comments or questions at this point?
Yeah, Kathy, this is Lauren.
Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
Noah glossed over the south end and didn't talk about it other than say he wasn't going to talk about it, I think. But I want to understand the alignment at the south end. Is it correct? It comes off the trail at Forest Park Drive, then goes on La Honda and goes up a ways and then crosses probably about at the low spot. And then where it starts.
No.
No?
So this was an evaluated alternative along La Honda. Preferred alternative runs along the west side of the railroad along the bluff. So set down from the fences that you see up on the top of the bluff. So we bench into the bluff and we run it along that corridor. So it's approximately this yellow line that runs right through there.
Okay, because it was so small and you know the blue line stood out, so I thought, oh well, that's an interesting alignment, and that would help take care of some huge issues with properties and the Marathon line on that side.
So again, yeah, the Marathon line isn't such a problem in this section. It gets into where we have, I'm sorry. Marathon line gets difficult as we get further north where there's a lot of grade variations. There's kind of the humps and valleys as you go along the corridor. And where we have requirements for our trail to be relatively flat to meet American with Disabilities Act requirements, we end up cutting out some of the humps and filling in some of the low points. Marathon has some concerns with just, reducing grade or increasing grade above their pipeline and what that means for maintenance and access. So along this southern section, we're in a bluff between Marathon's line and between an AWW sewer force main that runs right through the fenced yards of the properties along that bluff, but we're still 25 feet within the railroad right of way for the entire corridor. So we're doing our best to minimize the impacts to adjacent property owners and limiting the amount that the trail construction will extend into that area that they've enjoyed as use in their backyard.
Okay, I've been out there to walk that more than once, and is the proposed alignment to the east side of the the installed fences that are there now?
It is. There's a retaining wall that we need to install in order to keep the bluff stable for trail construction. So we're estimating that the fences will need to be moved towards the homes, between 2 and 4 feet from where they are right now. So that's the impact, still though within the railroad right of way. And that'll be refined as we move along too. Again, we don't know exactly where the marathon line is, so there could be some adjustments, but that maintains the trail at an elevation and distance that is acceptable to the railroad. As far as safety concerns, we can't get much closer or any closer to the railroad. And then the trail will be, 12 feet down below the top of the bluff. So anybody who's at the top of the bluff won't even see anybody walking along the trail.
So will all that vegetation need to be removed on the bluff?
There's, I could say all the vegetation, but within the construction area, we'll be removing the vegetation, yeah.
To put where the retaining wall would be?
Yeah, we'll have to clear it to construct a retaining wall on the trail.
'Cause I know when we did the walk, from that moment on, we realized, yeah, that could have a big impact on that west side. And so at that point, when we did the walk, we asked if that whole area could be, the trail could be east of that. And we were told, yeah.
Yeah.
But now since then, we're not seeing that consideration at all.
So
We're as east as we can be while staying within far enough away from the railroad tracks that the railroad will allow it. So as far as that goes, the maintaining vegetation, that'll maximize the amount of vegetation, to the west that remains. Taylor, we were talking about vegetation along the corridor. Taylor reminded me that Parks plants, I can't remember how many thousands of trees every year, try to revegetate areas. So she definitely wanted me to make that point that areas that are affected by construction can be revegetated.
To answer your question, Kathy, all of the trees in my backyard and every backyard along Resolution Drive, including my 50-year-old beehive spruce, will be removed during construction.
So I think this is an example of where we want to look at this with some aerial photos and look at the cross sections specifically at the land use committee meeting and not spend a whole bunch of time going into it here, because I think there are a lot of, questions that we and property owners and others have, and it'd be great to look at it with sort of one of the more detailed aerial photographic based maps. That'd be my suggestion.
Yes, John, I think that's excellent. That's the whole point of a land use committee level evaluation of these things. And this map that you've had now out for a while, these big thick lines just don't give the level of detail that we feel we need to look at from a council perspective, especially now that we know about the northern part and how that would be affected.
General, just, to show approximate limits, just so that, because we're still, at this point, this level here, we're just still refining the concept design, let alone, the exact impacts. So as we progress, we'll have more and more detail to be able to share and can really hone in on specific impacts.
And when will what kind of time frame are we looking at for that?
Well, so we have a pretty detailed design that we've been working on. It's not final, will be final before the public open house. DOT and Parks haven't reviewed it and vetted it in detail yet. So I'm a little hesitant to share it with everybody if there's going to be changes made by or comments from DOT and Parks. But I think definitely before the public open house, we'll have some more detailed information that we can show everybody. So we'll cross sections, and I think to individual property owners, I think the municipality has shared some cross sections that show where the trail is intended to be and the impacts to their property along Resolution Drive. But those are still preliminary, and we don't want to, I don't know, make any assertions that we'll have to change in the future. But before
I
the
think-
public open house in March, I think we'll be ready to go.
So I think with regard to a land use committee meeting, if it's possible to have that before the open house, but when some of those detailed graphics are available, that would be what we would want to look at. Because it would be nice to sort of see that before the open house. That would help us refine our comments in any position we have. So you might want to think about when we would try to schedule something between now and the open house for a land use committee meeting that would give us the graphics to have some of these detailed conversations, both about the south, also how things are going to be located specifically on the north end with the relocation of the coastal.
Yeah, thank you, John. And I guess this is just my personal thing. It's not anything that the council or the land use committee has talked about, but I have a real problem with the formatting of open houses because you've got people milling in and out over a 2-year time period where one person of the project team may be talking to somebody and hears something, and then another member of the project team, 3 other people tell you something, and it's all verbal. And yeah, you might have areas where people can write down on Post-it notes what they think, but it really isn't a comprehensive review of, okay, public, here we are at the next phase of this project. This is what we want you to know. And do you have any questions? And we all hear the questions and we all hear the answers, as opposed to people wandering around. And so at some point during this open house, can you format it to, have that element in, so that there's a presentation and then what everybody's seen, and people are hearing everybody else's questions or comments. From a community council perspective, and considering this is in our boundaries, we'd like to hear that level of public input rather than there's a ton of people signing a petition saying we support this, but that doesn't help our council really get to where we want to be with regard to having a trail that really makes sure it addresses things and is a really positive project for our area. So
We can discuss the format with DOT and parks. I mean, the only concern I have with that is, is that if you're not there for the presentation, then you miss it all, right? So that it's a very narrow time frame where you have to be there in order to really get the full picture. That's generally why we format it the way we do, so that people can come in and out at their leisure. But if a presentation would be helpful, then we can discuss with the DOT and parks and see what we can do.
Okay, I think that would be very, very helpful. And I've been to plenty
But
of
I
meetings
just
over the
wanna-
decades that incorporates a presentation. So I think it's doable.
So Kathy, a quick time check. I see Kathleen's hands up, and I don't want to cut her off, but just keep in mind that we're at 10 to 9, and we may need to extend slightly, although I don't think the land use committee will take much time. So just a
Okay,
point out the
thank you,
time
John.
management.
So Kathleen, did you have a question
I have a comment.
or comment?
Following up on your comment about the open house. If people want to be there, they will be there. Zach has commented on how many people are interested. Matt, if you've commented on all the public input you've gotten. If people want to be there and care about this, they will be there. You can have a formal format with a presentation and a question and answer period, and where people are attentive and present, and everybody will get the same answer at the same time. So I really support that kind of format for this gathering. I agree with you about open houses. So that's all I
Agreed.
wanted to say. Thank you.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Okay, we need to wrap this up because we know very graciously that the project team has agreed to participate in a land use committee meeting, date to be determined. And so thank you so much for coming again this evening to provide some information. I think the messaging is we want to see a lot more detail, and this map with the big broad lines just isn't quite where we need to be at this point. I mean, we've seen these big lines now for 2 years. So we'd like to see something more than that now. And of course, something we haven't seen yet, the northern section where the coastal trail would be relocated. So one last chance for anybody to say anything before we go ahead and move on to land use committee report. If not, we appreciate everybody's time. And so we'll be in touch, Noah and team and Matt and yeah, and Taylor, and we'll make sure that we get something lined up that accommodates everybody's schedules. Okay, so thank you for taking that off the screen now. And so land use committee, John, I'll let you go ahead and take the lead on the mayor's housing strategy.
Okay, well, there's about 3 things, and actually with the mayor's housing strategy, let's see, is Graham still on or has he potentially left? We know that the assembly put together a housing strategy and a housing plan, and the mayor is actually in the process of putting one together too. And I was asked if I could look at and provide some informal comments on that based on how active TCC has been on a lot of the residential land use ordinances and some of the task forces. So I did provide that to Graham, and I think they're going to make some changes. When that is available, we'll get it formally, and then we'll want to look at it as sort of a board and the council to see what changes we want to make. But one of the areas I emphasized was making sure that you're just not focusing on changing the regulations, but doing things that are trying to reduce the cost of housing through making more land available, perhaps providing some tax breaks, looking at improving infrastructure development, and perhaps even sharing some of the infrastructure costs of water, sewer, and things like that. So stay tuned there. As Anna mentioned, I have been asked to be on 2 working groups, providing a community council perspective. There's also folks from Spenard, I think, on one of them, if not more than one. And the first one is the site access that Anna mentioned. And that was a series of ordinances that were passed and has ended up having some additional problems and roadblocks for development. So they're in the process of revisiting them. And those things will have an effect on both the design of housing and pedestrian safety, but also how they're accessed. And in many cases, it's going to be very germane to something like the development that is being proposed east of the Rustic Goat, J.J. Brooks, that could truly affect how the access to that area is going to be in terms of alleys and things like that. So they're in the process of having a couple of different groups, and I suspect they'll also have a draft ordinance out, as Anna said, maybe planning and zoning in March, that we can take a look at and specifically comment on. Sort of the last working group I'm on is one through Tom Davis, and as a result of many of the changes they've made to reduce on-site parking and things like that, it's had some unintended effects on things like snow maintenance and safety when the right of way. So they're kind of going back and taking a look at what are going to be some of those effects of those changes that may put more cars on streets that cause problems with snow maintenance and snow storage and safety. So that one's just kicking off. And I think we will see what comes of that. I guess, Kathy, one thing to think about is as they provide materials to me, I'll have to figure out if there's a way to make those materials available not only to the board, but also to TCC residents that are interested in them when they're available. And so we'll have to give some thought about some ways of making some of these presentations and information available to people who are interested in it. So I think that's kind of it now for land use committee, other than the fact that you've heard we're going to want to have a meeting on Fish Creek as soon as we can figure out how to schedule one.
Okay, thanks, John. And I just might say, as far as working on site park and that was eliminated. Of course, CC submitted extensive that. And so our position was clear that we think it's a bad idea to not provide on-site parking because of just the issues that you've raised. So, we're coming full circle. We weighed in on it before the ordinance was approved by the assembly, and now oh, maybe we'll talk about this again. So, well, we can just, dust off what our comments were before, and I think they're still very applicable.
Yeah,
based
absolutely.
on the relooking at that whole conundrum. Okay, so we have now 4 minutes until our normal adjourn time. So does anyone else want to share anything or say one last thought before we adjourn?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody who came from the to talk about the Fish Creek Trail extension. It seems like there's been a public input process, but that it hasn't had a lot of impact on the design. And so I guess I'm looking forward to the land use committee meeting when they have more detailed maps, hopefully, and more maybe ability to talk about how there might be some potential mitigations for some of these impacts. Because like it says in the TCC resolution, everyone's for this trail, but it's literally the details of ironing out how it moves forward that still needs some more work. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm grateful that the team is gonna be hopefully showing up to that with more detailed maps. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I think well said, well stated. Okay, anybody else? If not, I believe it's 9 o'clock. So can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn the meeting?
Thank you, John. Can I have a second?
This is Pat. I'll second.
Thanks, Pat. Is there any objection to adjourn this evening's Turnagain Community Council January 9th, 2025 general membership meeting? If not, thank you so much for participating. Ditto to those who provided information, and our next meeting again will be February, I believe it's 6th. So we hope to see you then, the first Thursday of the month. Or excuse me, that's, yes, the 6th, February 6th. So thank you, and we will send out a notice when the land use committee meeting date has been set. We'll set out an email notice to our whole email list so everybody knows about it.
Thanks.
Okay,
Good
thanks,
night,
Kathy.
everybody. Thank you.
Good night.
Kathy, I'll just try to be the last one off because maybe that's when the recording stops. I don't really know how this stuff works.
you
Yeah, I
can
think
record it.
you're the one that's going to stop the recording.
You can stop the recording now.
Oh,
Just
okay.
hit the button.
Right.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.